Educational GMAT. Your partner in your GMAT journey.
This is an interesting one, guys. This is an interesting one. A certain company conducted phone interviews for each of 6 candidates. 6 candidates, U through Z. So these 6 candidates are represented in this table. So there is a phone interview that's being conducted by the company, and that phone interview has been conducted for 6 candidates. Based upon the performance of these candidates in the phone interview, they may or may not be invited for an on-site interview. And during the phone interview, each candidate is assessed across 5 criteria, right? Could be anything, right? Technical competence, soft skills, whatever, right? So these are the 5 criteria. And the ratings that were assigned to each of these candidates across 5 criteria during the phone interview is presented in this table. Now, the question is asking us that okay, all right. For each of the following numbers, by the way, is these numbers. Select yes if a group with exactly that number of candidates could be invited for an on-site interview from among these 6 candidates. In other words, based upon this data and this constraint, out of these 6 candidates, is it possible for just one candidate to be invited for the on-site interview? That's what the question is asking for. So what do you think about this? Among these candidates, based upon this constraint, is it possible that only one candidate is invited for the on-site interview? What is the constraint? Obviously, it makes sense to look at the constraint closely. Notice if not all of the phone interview candidates are invited, then by company policy, each candidate in the group invited for the on-site interview must have had greater ratings for each of the 5 criteria than each of the candidates that are not invited. Can someone tell me how would we approach this? How would we approach this? Yes, guys, how do you think we should approach this? Can only one person be invited for the interview based upon this constraint? Now think about it. Let's look at candidate Z. Candidate Z has the highest among these interviewees. Candidate Z has the highest rating for this criteria. Agreed? So which clearly means that if there is one person, only one person to be invited for the on-site interview, it could be candidate Z based upon criteria A, right? But if only Z has to be invited, then based upon what is given to us, Notice the candidate invited for the on-site interview must have had greater ratings for each of the 5 criteria than each of the candidates that are not invited. So essentially what this is, it's not difficult, guys. Based upon criteria A, it seems that Z perhaps can be the only candidate who is invited. But for Z alone to be invited, Z has to have greater ratings for all the other criteria as well, right? But notice that's not the case. For example, for criteria B, uh, in fact, Z does not have the highest rating, right? Uh, for criteria C, Z does have the highest rating. For criteria D, again, Z has the highest rating, and for E as well. So the problem here would be with criteria B. So for criteria A, C, D, and E, Z does have the highest rating, but for criteria B, Z does not have the highest rating, right? So there is absolutely no way that only one candidate may be invited. Guys, are we clear? Any element of doubt that you have, let's discuss. Any element of doubt that you have. Right? Again, we started with Z because Z does have the highest rating for criteria A, but for only Z to be invited, Z should have had, according to the constraint given, Z should have had greater ratings for each of the 5 criteria than what? Each of the candidates that are not invited. So if Z is invited and these 5 are not invited, then Z should have had greater ratings, not just for this criteria, but for all the criteria. But we realize that that's not the case. And hence, one person cannot be in, only one person cannot be invited. Okay. How about this? Can 2 people be invited? Can 2 people be invited for the on-site interview? Now, if there are 2 people to be invited, which ones do you think qualify? I think Z will qualify because Z has the highest rating for all the criteria other than criteria B, right? So if there are 2 people to be invited, Z definitely qualifies. Who is the other person that we can think will qualify? Obviously, it has to be, so bit of a visualization helps here. Notice U and Y are the other two that have very decent ratings, correct? So it has to be one among these two. Now, let us start with U, right? So which means Z and U are invited. So again, given this criteria, if Z and U are invited, then both Z and U should have higher ratings across all the 5 criteria, higher than the others that are not invited. Let us see if this is the case. Notice for criteria A, this satisfies, right? Because 4.8 and 4.6 are both higher than for all the other candidates. Okay. So we are okay with criteria A. How about criteria B? No. Notice Z has a 4.4 while Y has a 4.6, right? So clearly going by B, in fact, this will not fit in, right? Let's look at Charlie, by the way. 4.8 and 4.4 are higher than or equal to all of these. So we are okay with Charlie. Similarly, notice 4.2 is higher than all these. So we are okay with this. We are not okay with Edward also. Notice because U has a 4.2 while Y has a 5, right? So clearly you will not qualify, right? So let's look at Y. If Z and Y can be invited for on-site interview, again, the problem here would be criteria B, right? Because Z has only a 4.4 while U has a 4.8. So clearly Z cannot be called over U, right? So in other words, any combination of two candidates that you take will not be able to qualify as per this constraint. So two people can also not be invited for the on-site interview. Okay, how about this? Now I'll give you a couple of minutes to see if you can apply this. Out of these 6 candidates whose phone interview was conducted, is it possible to invite 3 candidates for on-site interview based upon this constraint? The answer is yes. Very nice. Now, clearly, visually looking at it, which 3 candidates would qualify? Z, U, and Y, because these seem to be the ones that have gotten the most uh, ratings, right? So if this is the case, let's look at, so which means these are the candidates who are not invited. So let's look at Z. Let's look at criteria A rather, right? 4.8, 4.6, and 4.6 greater than these three. So we are okay with criteria A. Let's look at criteria B. 4.4, 4.8, and 4.6. Each of these is greater than these three. So criteria B is also okay. How about criteria Charlie? 4.8, 4.4, 4.4 is again greater than all of these three. So we are okay there as well. How about criteria David? D, 4.2, 4.2, 4.2, right? Each of these is again greater than these three. So fine. And how about criteria Edward E, 5, 4.2, 5.0 is again greater than the ratings of all the three who are not invited. So a group of 3 can definitely be called for the on-site interview. And which would be those 3 candidates who are called for on-site interview? Z, U, and Y. So I think you guys did very well. Any doubts that anyone has?